What follows has been assembled from the testimony of 6 members of the watch at the facility known in our records only as the Deephold, taken in the days after the night that the Concord still does not have an official name for. The accounts disagree in small ways, as honest accounts always do. I have left the disagreements in. I have learned in the course of taking these testimonies that the disagreements are where the truth lives, and that an account with no seams in it is an account that has been sanded down by someone who is afraid of what the seams would show. These seams show everything. Read them carefully. By the time you reach the last of them, you will understand why 6 hardened keepers of the most secure cell in Concord space agreed to speak at all, and why none of them, not one, asked to be protected from the consequences of speaking. I begin with the testimony of the Gate-Warden, whose duty it was to receive the prisoner, because the Gate-Warden saw him first. I have received 4,000 prisoners through the outer gate of the Deephold in my years of service, the Gate-Warden said, and I had stopped seeing them long ago. That is the first thing you must understand, and I am not proud of it, but I will not lie to you, because after that night I have decided I am done lying about small things. A Gate-Warden who sees prisoners does not last. You learn to look at the manifest and not the face. You learn that the thing coming through your gate is a category, not a creature, a risk tier, a containment class, a number that tells you which corridor and which restraints and which level of the dark below. I had received warlords through that gate. I had received the unmade things that the Concord keeps because killing them would teach the galaxy that the Concord can be made to kill, and the Concord prefers to be thought of as a thing that never needs to. I had received horrors, and I had stopped seeing all of them because seeing them was a door I could not afford to leave open, not in that place, not at that gate. The human came through on foot, the Gate-Warden said, which was itself irregular because Tier 1 prisoners are brought through restrained on a transit cradle, immobilized, sedated, a package rather than a person. But the human had refused the sedation. Not violently, the escort reported, simply by declining it, by saying that he would walk, and something in the way he said it had made the escort, against every protocol, allow it. So he came through my gate on his own feet, in the plain restraints, a small thing by the standards of what I had received, soft-looking, the way humans are soft-looking right up until the reports about them start coming in. And he stopped at my station. They are not supposed to stop. The corridor pulls them forward. The lights and the doors are arranged so that a prisoner is always being moved, never standing, never still, because a still prisoner is a prisoner who is thinking, and we do not want them to think. But he stopped, and he looked at me, and he did the thing that I have not been able to stop turning over in my mind since, the thing that began all of it, though none of us knew then that anything had begun. You must understand what the Deephold is, the Gate-Warden said, before you can understand why a small thing mattered so much. The Deephold is not a prison the way the lesser worlds keep prisons. It is the place the Concord built so that it would never have to think about the things it could not bear to kill and could not bear to release. It is buried so deep that the dark down there is older than the Concord. The lower levels were carved before there was a Concord to carve them, and we only found them and made them ours and filled them. There is no sky in the Deephold. There is no day. The doctrine that governs every stone of the place has one principle beneath all its rules, and the principle is separation, that the keeper and the kept must never, for one instant, be permitted to recognize each other, because recognition is the crack through which everything escapes. We were trained on that principle until it was not a thing we believed but a thing we were. A keeper who recognizes a prisoner has failed. A keeper who is recognized by a prisoner has failed worse. The whole architecture, the cradles and the corridors and the one-way instruments and the rotations, all of it exists for one purpose, which is to make sure that no eye in the Deephold ever meets another eye and knows it for a person. That is the wall the place is built of, not stone. Stone is just the part you can see. The real wall is the not recognizing, and every one of us was a brick in it, and we were proud to be, because we had been taught that the wall was the only thing standing between the Concord and the horrors in the dark. He read my nameplate and he said my name, not the rank, the name. And he said, "You've been here a long time, haven't you?" It wasn't a question that wanted anything. He wasn't working me. I have been worked by the best, by prisoners who could find the cracks in a stone, and this was not that. He just looked at me, at the Gate-Warden who had stopped seeing prisoners 30 years ago, and he saw me, and he said my name, and he said, "You've been here a long time," the way you would say it to someone you had found sitting alone at the end of a long day. And I felt the wall I was made of move. One brick. Just one. I did not know then that a wall can come down one brick at a time, and that the first brick is the hardest and the rest are nothing. That once a single brick is gone, the whole weight of the thing starts working against itself instead of for itself. I only knew that a condemned creature had looked at me and seen a tired old man at the end of a long shift, and had said so, kindly, expecting nothing, and that no one, not a prisoner, not a colleague, not in 30 years, had looked at me and seen that, because the doctrine had made it impossible. The doctrine had made me unseeable. And the human had not been told the doctrine, or had been told it and did not care, and had simply seen me anyway. And then the corridor pulled him forward, and he let it, and he was gone down toward the dark below, and I stood at my gate and found that my hands were not quite steady, and I did not know why, and I told myself it was nothing, and it was not nothing. It was the first of us. I was the first of us. I just didn't have the word for it yet. The word I would learn before dawn was seen. He had seen me, and once a thing has been seen, it cannot go back to being a category, and a Gate-Warden who has been seen cannot go back to not seeing the ones who come through after. Here the testimony of the Gate-Warden ends, and I take up the account of the corridor keeper, who walked the human down to the dark below, and who is the second of the 6, and who tells it differently, as you will see. I did not want the duty, the corridor keeper said. The long walk down to the Tier 1 cells is the worst duty in the Deephold, because it is long, and it is quiet, and the prisoner is beside you the whole way, and there is nothing to do but walk and not think about the thing walking beside you. Most of us walk it in silence. Silence is policy, but it is also mercy, mercy for ourselves, because a Tier 1 prisoner who talks is a Tier 1 prisoner who is trying to get inside you, and the policy of silence is a wall we build to keep them out. I have walked monsters down that corridor and not said a word, and not let them say a word, and arrived at the cell with myself intact. That was the job. The wall was the job. The human did not push against the wall, the corridor keeper said, and that is what undid me, because I had no defense prepared for a thing that did not push. He walked beside me in his restraints down the long, quiet dark, and he did not try to get inside me. He did not plead or threaten or bargain or do any of the 1,000 things prisoners do on that walk to crack the silence. He just walked. And after a while, and I will never forgive myself for this, except that I have come to think there was nothing to forgive. After a while, the silence stopped being my wall and started being just two people walking in the dark, and somewhere in there, without deciding to, I said something to him. I don't even remember what. Something small. Something about the length of the corridor. And he answered, the way you answer a person, and I answered back. And by the time we reached the bottom of that long walk, I had done the thing the wall existed to prevent. I had talked to him. I had let him be a person beside me in the dark. And the terrible thing, the thing I have not told anyone until now, is that it was the first real conversation I had had with anyone in longer than I could remember. We do not talk to each other down in the Deephold. The job does not allow it. And a human prisoner walking to the most secure cell in Concord space had given me the first human conversation I'd had in years, and I delivered him to his cell and sealed him in and walked back up the long corridor alone, and the silence on the way back up was not a wall anymore. It was just silence. Empty. And I understood, climbing back toward the light, that I had been lonely for a very long time, and that I had needed the wall to not know it, and that the human had taken my wall down just by not pushing on it, and now I had to live in the corridor without it. The corridor keeper's testimony breaks off there and resumes later in the night, and I will return to it. But to understand what happened in the cell itself, we must turn to the third of the six, the cell monitor, who watched the human through the eyes of the Deephold's instruments, and who is, of all six, the one whose account I find hardest to read, because the cell monitor began the night believing in the Deephold completely, and did not end it that way. My duty was the watchroom, the cell monitor said. I never touched a prisoner in my life. I watched them through the instruments on the screens, which is its own kind of distance, maybe the safest distance of all, because a prisoner on a screen is barely even a category. He is a pattern of light, a set of readings, a problem in temperature and movement and sound. The Tier 1 cell is the most watched place in Concord space. There is no corner of it the instruments do not see, no sound they do not hear, no rise in the prisoner's heartbeat they do not record. We watch everything, because the doctrine of the Deephold is that a prisoner who is completely seen is a prisoner who is completely controlled, that total observation is total power, that to see all of a thing is to own all of a thing. I want you to sit with that doctrine, the cell monitor said, because it is the doctrine I believed with my whole heart at the start of that night, and it is the doctrine the human broke, and I did not even understand it was breaking until it was already broken. We thought we were the ones watching. That was the whole architecture of the place. We watch, they are watched. We see, they are seen. The power runs one way downward from the eye to the thing the eye is fixed upon. And the human sat down in the most watched cell in Concord space, under the total gaze of the Deephold, and he did the thing that brought the whole doctrine down. And the thing was so simple that I have trouble, even now, explaining to people why it mattered. He looked into the instruments. He found them, every one of them, one after another, though they are hidden, though no prisoner had ever found more than one or two. He found them all slowly over the first hour, not with any device, just by watching the cell the way we watched him, by being as patient as we were. And when he had found one, he did not try to break it or block it or rage at it. He looked into it. He looked into the eye of the Deephold, into the instrument, into the watchroom, into me, and he spoke to it, to me. He knew someone was on the other side. He said, and the instruments recorded it, it is in the record, anyone can pull it, he said, I know you're watching. I know it's a long shift. I know you probably didn't choose to be down here any more than I did. And then he asked me my name, through the instrument. He asked the watcher its name, and no prisoner in the history of the Deephold had ever once thought to do that, because the doctrine made it unthinkable. The doctrine said the watcher has no name. The watcher is the eye, the watcher is the power, and the watched is the thing, and he reversed it. He reached up through the instrument that was supposed to make him a thing, and he made me a person, and he asked the person its name. I did not answer, the cell monitor said. We are not able to answer. The watchroom is one way. There is no channel from me to the cell. He could not have heard me even if I had been fool enough to speak. But that is the thing I have to make you understand, the thing that broke the doctrine and broke me with it. It did not matter that I could not answer. He was not really asking for an answer. He was telling me that he knew I was there, that the watcher was being watched, that the eye had been seen, that the power did not run only one way anymore. For my entire career, I had been the unseen seer, safe behind the instruments, the one who looks and is never looked at. And a human in a sealed cell had looked back up the line of the instruments and found me at the end of it and said, I see you too. And once you have been seen by the thing you are watching, you are not watching anymore. You are just two people looking at each other through a wall, and the wall stops being power and starts being only a wall. Only a sad, cold thing standing between two people who have noticed each other. And I sat in my watchroom for the rest of that night, unable to return to the comfortable lie that I was the I and he was the thing, because he had said my own private loneliness back to me through a hidden instrument. I know it's a long shift, and he had been right. And no I that has been told, it is lonely, can go on pretending it is only an I. I want to tell you what the watchroom had been to me, the cell monitor said, so that you understand what he took from me, because he did take something, and I have only lately understood that the thing he took was a thing I should never have had. The watchroom was safety. It was the one place in the Deephold where I was certain I was on the right side of the wall. Down in the corridors near the cells, a keeper can forget for a moment which side they are on. The prisoners are close, they have faces, the line can blur. In the watchroom there is no blur. There is the I and there is the watched, and I was the I purely, absolutely, a person reduced to a function and grateful for the reduction, because a function cannot be lonely, a function cannot be afraid, a function cannot lie awake wondering what its life had become. I had hidden inside the I. The Doctrine had offered me a place to hide from my own self and called it duty, and I had taken it. And for years I had watched the worst things in Concord space through those instruments and felt nothing because the I feels nothing. The I only sees. And he found the I, the cell monitor said, and he did not rage at it, and that is what I cannot get past. If he had raged at the instruments I could have stayed the I. Rage confirms the I. Rage says you are the watcher and I am the watched and I hate you for it, and the Doctrine has an answer for hate. The Doctrine is built on the expectation of hate. He did not give me hate. He gave me recognition. He looked into the hidden eye of the Deephold, and he did not see an enemy. He saw a tired person on the other end of a long instrument at the end of a long shift, and he was sorry for that person, sorry for me, the watcher. He pitied the eye gently and asked it its name, and a thing that has been pitied cannot stay an eye, because pity is a thing that only passes between persons, and to receive it is to be confessed back into being a person whether you wish it or not. I had spent years becoming an I to stop being a lonely person, and in one sentence through a hidden instrument he confessed me back into the loneliness, and I hated him for it for about an hour, and then I left the watchroom, which is the most forbidden act there is, and I went down to the cell, because if I was going to be a person again then, I was done being a person alone behind glass, and I would rather be a person standing at a condemned man's door than an I safe in a room. And that is a choice I did not know I was capable of making until the human made it possible. The cell monitor falls silent there, and I let the silence stand, and I turn now to the fourth of the six, the night captain, who was the ranking officer of the watch that night, and who is the one who tried to stop it, and whose testimony is the account of a man watching his own certainty come apart in his hands. By the third hour I knew something was wrong, the night captain said, though I could not have told you what. Nothing on the boards was wrong. The prisoner was secured. The cell was sealed. Every reading was nominal. By every measure the Deephold uses to know that it is safe, we were safe. And yet I could feel it, the way you feel a change in a room full of people before anyone has said anything, the way the air changes before the argument starts. My watch was wrong. My people were wrong. The Gate-Warden had come off his post shaken and would not say why. The corridor keeper had come back up from the long walk and gone to sit alone and would not be drawn out. The cell monitor was in the watchroom behaving strangely, leaning toward the screens instead of away from them. Something was moving through my watch, person to person, and it had come in through the gate with the human, and I could not see it. And a night captain who cannot see the thing moving through his watch is a night captain losing his watch. So I did what the Doctrine told me to do, the night captain said. The Doctrine has an answer for a prisoner who is affecting the watch. The answer is contact denial. You cut the prisoner off from the watch entirely, no walks, no monitoring shifts longer than an hour, no single keeper exposed to him for long enough to be worked. You rotate everyone. You break the contact. The Doctrine assumes that whatever a dangerous prisoner does, he does it through sustained contact, through getting his hooks into a single keeper over time. And so you deny him the time, you keep everyone moving, you make sure no one is alone with him long enough to be turned. I ordered contact denial. I rotated the whole watch. I pulled the cell monitor and put in a fresh one. I reassigned the corridor. I did everything the Doctrine said, and I did it well, and it made everything worse, and it took me until nearly dawn to understand why. It made everything worse. the night captain said, because the doctrine was built for a prisoner who works people one at a time, and the human was not working anyone. That was what I could not see. There were no hooks. There was nothing to deny. The thing moving through my watch was not something the human was doing to my people. It was something my people were discovering about themselves, and the human was only the occasion of it, the loose thread. And by rotating the watch, I did not contain the thread, I pulled it. Every keeper I rotated past that cell, every fresh set of eyes I put on him in my certainty that fresh eyes would be safe eyes, came away changed the same way, because the thing was not in the duration of the contact. It was in the contact itself, in the single fact that the human treated every keeper who came near him as a person, immediately, completely, without the slow work the doctrine was built to detect. I thought I was denying him contact. I was introducing him to my entire watch. By the 4th hour, every keeper in the Deephold had stood for at least a few minutes in front of the most secure cell in Concord space and been seen by the thing inside it. And I had arranged it personally, in the name of the doctrine, and the doctrine had been my enemy and I had trusted it, and that is the part I have to live with. I have spent my whole life inside doctrine, the night captain said, and I want to tell you what it is to watch your doctrine fail, because it is not like watching a wall fall. A wall falls and you see it fall. Doctrine does not fall. Doctrine keeps telling you it is working right up until the moment you realize it has been working against you the entire time. And the realization does not arrive as a crash but as a slow, sick turning, the way the floor turns under you when you understand you have been reading a map upside down, and every confident step you took carried you further from where you meant to go. I had run contact denial perfectly. I had executed every protocol with the precision of 30 years. And each perfect execution had spread the thing further, because the protocols had been written by people who assumed the danger was the prisoner getting into the keepers. And the danger was the opposite. The danger was the keepers getting out of themselves. And there is no protocol in all the Concord for that, because the Concord has never once imagined that the thing it most needs to prevent is its own servants remembering they are people. I gave the last order around the 5th hour, the night captain said, and I want it in the record that I gave it, because I will not hide behind the doctrine the way the doctrine taught me to hide behind it. When I understood that every keeper above was lost, that the Gate-Warden would not return to his gate as he had been, that the corridor keeper sat unreachable, that the cell monitor had begun speaking back to the screens, I reached for the doctrine's last answer, the deepest one, the one you are never supposed to need. I ordered the human moved down to the lowest level, to the deep keeper, the one wall the doctrine swore could never come down. I gave him to the bottom of the Deephold. I told myself it was containment. I know now it was something else. I know now that some part of me, some part that had already been changed by standing too long near that cell, gave the human to the deep keeper not to contain him, but because the deep keeper was the loneliest man in the building, 40 years alone in the dark at the bottom of everything, and some part of me that I will not pretend to fully understand wanted the human to reach him too. I told the watch it was the doctrine's final answer. Maybe it was. But I have lived long enough with my own orders to know when one of them has 2 reasons, and that one had 2, and the second reason is the only thing I did right all night. Now I must slow down, the one taking the testimony writes, because the 5th account is the hinge of the whole night, and it is the strangest, and it is the one I almost did not include, because when I first heard it I did not believe it, and then I checked it against the instrument record and it was true. It is the testimony of the deep keeper, the keeper of the lowest level, the one who has charge of the prisoners the Concord keeps below even the Tier 1 cells, the ones who are not in the records at all. The deep keeper is the loneliest post in the Deephold and the most trusted, given only to those who have served longest and feel least, and the deep keeper who spoke to me had held that post for 40 years, and had not, by his own account, felt anything in 30 of them. I was not part of it, the deep keeper said. That is the first thing. I was below all of it, on the lowest level with my own charges, and the human in the Tier 1 cell was 3 levels above me and no concern of mine. Whatever was moving through the watch upstairs, it was not moving through me because nothing moves through me. That is why I have my post. I am the one the Doctrine trusts when it has stopped trusting everyone else, because I am the one who feels nothing, who sees only categories, who has not had a wall taken down because I am the wall. I am the deepest wall in the Deephold, the last one, the one they put at the very bottom to hold the things that nothing else can hold. But the watch upstairs came apart in the 4th and 5th hours, the Deep Keeper said, the way the Night Captain has told you, and when a watch comes apart, the Doctrine has a final answer, and the final answer is me. The Night Captain, when he understood he was losing his watch, when he understood that every keeper above had been changed by the thing in the Tier 1 cell, did the last thing the Doctrine allows. He ordered the human moved down, to me, to the lowest level below the records into my charge, because I was the one keeper in the Deephold who could not be reached, the one wall that does not come down, and the Doctrine said, if a prisoner is unmaking your watch, give him to the keeper who has no watch left to unmake. So they brought the human down to me, the Deep Keeper said, in the 5th hour of the night, and I want to tell you that I felt nothing because that is who I am, and for the first hour it was true. I put him in the deepest cell. I did not speak to him. I do not speak to my charges. The things I keep down here are past speaking to. I went back to my post and I watched the dark and I felt nothing. And I thought, the Doctrine is right, I am the wall that holds. Let them send me their unmakers. I will feel nothing and the night will end. You should know how a person becomes what I became, the Deep Keeper said, because no one is born the wall at the bottom of the Deephold. You are made into it slowly, and the making is the saddest part, sadder than anything that happened that night. I was not always without feeling. 40 years ago I came down here a young keeper, and I felt everything too much, the way the young do, and the dark down here was unbearable to me, and the loneliness of the lowest post was a weight I did not think I could carry. And so I did what you do when a weight is too heavy to carry. I did not get stronger. That is a story people tell. You do not get stronger, you get number. I taught myself, year by year, to feel less, because feeling less was the only way to survive feeling at all. And the post rewarded me for it. The Doctrine rewarded me for it. Every year I felt a little less, I was trusted a little more, until the feeling nothing that had started as my wound had become my qualification. And they gave me the lowest level, the loneliest dark, because I had successfully killed the part of me that the dark would have destroyed. I was proud of it. Do you understand the horror of that? I was proud of having killed the living part of myself, because the Doctrine had taught me to call the killing strength. 40 years. I kept the bottom of the Deephold for 40 years and called the emptiness inside me discipline, and the Concord agreed, and trusted me above all others precisely, because I had so little self left for a prisoner to reach. And then in the 6th hour, in the deepest part of the night, the human in the deepest cell began, very quietly, to sing. I have kept the lowest level of the Deephold for 40 years, the Deep Keeper said, and no one has ever sung down here. The things I keep do not sing. The dark down here does not allow it. It is built to not allow it. The whole architecture of the lowest level is built to press the song out of a thing until only the silence is left. And the human sang anyway, quietly, not for me, not at me, not to work me. He did not even know which direction the keeper's post was. He could not have been singing at me. He sang the way a person sings to himself in the dark to keep himself company, low and tuneless and human, and the song came up through the lowest level of the Deephold, through 40 years of silence, and it reached the wall that does not come down. It was not a beautiful song, the Deep Keeper said, and I think that is why it reached me, because a beautiful song I could have defended against. A beautiful song would have been a performance, and I have spent 40 years deaf to performances. This was not that. This was the small tuneless thing a frightened person hums to himself when the dark is very large, and he is very alone, and he needs to make some human sound just to remember that he is still there, still a self, still a person the dark has not yet finished pressing into silence. I knew that song. Not the tune, there was barely a tune. I knew the need under it. I had felt that need 40 years ago in my first nights down here, before I taught myself to feel nothing, and I had pressed it down along with everything else, and I had not heard it from myself or anyone in 4 decades. And here it was, coming up out of the deepest cell, the exact sound my own young self had needed to make and had not been allowed to, sung by a condemned creature who was making it freely, who had not killed the living part of himself the way I had killed mine, who was facing the same dark that had unmade me, and was answering it not with silence but with a song. And the wall came down. I will not tell you what the song did to me, the deep keeper said, because it is mine, and because there are not words for it that would not make it smaller. I will only tell you that I am 80 years old, that I have kept the lowest dark for 40 of those years, that I had not wept since before I can remember, and that I sat at my post in the deepest part of the Deephold and listened to a condemned human sing himself company in the dark. And I remembered. That is the only word I remembered. I remembered that I had once been a person, before the post, before the wall, before the 40 years. And that the person I had been would have been ashamed of the wall I had become, and that the human 3 cells away, singing tunelessly to himself, was more of a person in his condemned dark than I had been in 40 years of keeping mine. And I got up from my post, the deep keeper said, the post the Doctrine trusted above all others, and I walked to the deepest cell, and I did the thing that no keeper of the lowest level has ever done in the history of the Deephold. I opened the door, not to free him. I want to be precise, because what I did matters and the precision matters. I did not open the door to free him. I opened the door because I could not stand to have a wall between myself and the only person who had been in that dark with me in 40 years. I opened the door so that I would not be alone. And the human looked up from his singing, and he was not surprised, and he did not rush the door, and he did not do any of the things a prisoner does when a door opens. He just looked at me, the oldest and hardest wall in the Deephold, standing in the open door of the deepest cell with tears on my face that I had forgotten my body could make, and he said, "You came down here to keep them company too, didn't you? And nobody ever came to keep you company." And I, who feel nothing, who am the wall, who am the bottom of the Deephold, I sat down on the floor of the deepest cell beside the condemned human, an old keeper and his prisoner, and for the first time in 40 years I was not alone, and the door stood open behind us, and neither of us moved toward it, because the open door was not the point. It had never been the point. The point was that 2 people were in the dark together, and neither of them was a category anymore. The deep keeper stops there. I did not press him further. There are places a testimony reaches where pressing would be a kind of violence, and that was one of them. I turn now to the 6th and last account, which is not the account of a keeper at all, but of the dawn relief, the warden who came to take command of the Deephold at first light, who walked into the facility expecting a routine handover and found instead the thing that the Concord still cannot name, and whose testimony is the one that tells us how it ended, and what it meant, and why I have assembled all of this at the risk of my own post. I arrived at dawn, the dawn relief said, to take command of the watch, and I knew before I reached the gate that something was wrong, because the gate was open. The outer gate of the Deephold is never open. And the Gate-Warden was not at his post, or rather he was near it but not at it, standing a little apart from it, the way a man stands when he has stopped believing in the thing he is standing guard over. I went in. I went down. And what I found, level by level, as I descended into the Deephold in the gray light of that dawn, was not a riot, and not an escape, and not any of the disasters the Doctrine has names for. What I found was quieter than any of those, and it frightened me more than any of those, because I had no name for it and neither did the Doctrine. I found the watch sitting with the prisoners, the dawn relief said. Not all at once, and not in any single dramatic scene, but everywhere, level by level, as I descended, keepers and prisoners, sitting together, talking or not talking, simply being in the same space without the wall between them. The corridor keeper was sitting in an open cell with a prisoner he had walked down years ago, the two of them talking like old men on a porch. The cell monitor had come down from the watchroom, had left the watchroom, the most forbidden thing had left the eye unwatched, and was standing at the Tier 1 cell, and the human was inside it, and they were talking through the door he had asked her name through, and she was answering now with her own voice, no instruments, two people. And at the very bottom in the deepest cell I found the deep keeper, the keeper the whole Concord trusts to feel nothing, sitting on the floor beside the condemned human with the door open, and neither of them moved toward the open door, and the deep keeper looked up at me and he was not ashamed and he said only, "We forgot they were people. He made us remember, that's all. That's the whole thing. He made us remember." By dawn the guards had become prisoners, the dawn relief said, and I have heard people tell it that way, as if the human had somehow turned the tables, made the keepers into the kept, some reversal of fortune, some trick. But that is not what I found, and I was there, and I am the one writing the report the Concord will read, and I will write the truth even though I know what it will cost me. The guards did not become prisoners. The guards discovered that they had always been prisoners, that the Deephold held its keepers as surely as it held its charges, that the doctrine of total observation and total distance and total walls had been a cell around every one of them. The Gate-Warden in his not seeing, the corridor keeper in his silence, the cell monitor behind her instruments, the night captain inside his certainty, the deep keeper at the bottom of his 40 years. They had all been in cells. They had built the cells themselves out of the doctrine, because the doctrine told them the cells were what kept them safe. And the human, thrown into the most secure cell in Concord space, condemned, watched, walled, sung into the deepest dark. The human had not escaped his cell. He had done something the doctrine had no defense against, because the doctrine was built to keep prisoners in and had never once imagined a prisoner who would want to let his keepers out. He had reached through the bars of his own cell, and he had opened theirs. I did not reseal the Deephold that morning, the dawn relief said, and that is the act for which I will answer, and I will answer for it gladly. I stood at the bottom of that facility in the gray dawn light, and I looked at the keepers sitting with their charges, the walls down, the doors open, 6 hardened servants of the Concord remembering that they were people, and I understood that I had a choice, and that the choice was the only real choice any of us in the Deephold had ever been given. I could call it a breach, and reseal the doors, and put the walls back up, and write a report that turned the most human night in the history of that place into a security failure to be corrected. Or I could tell the truth. I could write down what had actually happened, that a condemned human had walked into the most secure cell in Concord space, and by dawn, had freed everyone in the building, including the ones who held the keys, and let the Concord do what it would with the truth. I am writing it down, the dawn relief said. I am writing all of it down, every testimony, every seam, every disagreement, and I am sending it up the line to people who will not want it, because the Gate-Warden was right on the first page of this account, when he said that an account with no seams has been sanded down by someone afraid of what the seams would show. The Concord will be afraid of what these seams show. The Concord is built on the same doctrine the Deephold was built on: total observation, total distance, the wall between the watcher and the watched, the comfortable lie that the ones in power are not also in cells. And these 6 testimonies show that the lie can come down, that it came down in a single night. That all it took was one condemned person who refused to stop seeing the people who were supposed to be only his keepers, who treated every guard as a person until the guards could not help but become people, who reached through his own bars to open theirs, and who is, as I write this, still in the deepest cell of the Deephold, with the door standing open, keeping company with an old keeper who will not leave his side. They did not become prisoners by dawn, they became free. The report will say otherwise. The report always says otherwise. But you have read the testimonies now, all 6 seams and all, and you know what the report will not. You know what one person can do, even from inside the most secure cell ever built, even condemned, even watched, even walled, even sung into the deepest dark. He saw them. He would not stop seeing them. And being seen, it turns out, is the one thing no cell can hold, and no wall can stop, and no doctrine in all of Concord space has ever found a way to keep out, because it does not come in through the door. It was always already inside. He only reminded them it was there. The door of the deepest cell is still open. The old keeper is still beside him. And somewhere up the line, someone is reading this, afraid, and deciding whether to sand down the seams. I hope it is you. I hope you leave them in.